All right. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're looking at confidentiality and NDAs,
Oh,
specifically in Canadian construction contracts, as highlighted in the Gold Seal training series.
mm-hmm.
Really important stuff here for anyone, working on construction projects, especially if you're going for your Gold Seal certification.
Right.
This isn't just legal mumbo jumbo. We're talking ethics, trust, best practices.
Absolutely.
Picture this. You're on a big project, tons of moving parts, different companies all working together.
Yep.
How do we make sure that sensitive information stays protected?
That's the question.
That's where confidentiality and NDAs come in.
Exactly. Yeah, so NDAs, they're legally binding agreements.
Okay.
They protect all that sensitive info that gets shared back and forth during a project.
Makes sense.
It could be anything, trade secrets, financial details, all the technical specs.
Oh, yeah, all the bitty-gritty.
Even client requirements sometimes.
Yeah. So when we say trade secrets, like what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example, something juicy from the construction world?
Okay, let's say you've developed a super unique construction technique,
Ooh.
or maybe a special blend of materials that nobody else knows about.
Right.
Something that gives your company that competitive edge.
Okay, so like you're bidding on a project and you share this amazing new technique with a potential partner, and NDA makes sure they can't just run off with your idea.
Absolutely, that's exactly right.
Right.
That's a key part of it, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then the scope of confidentiality, what's that all about?
So it's not just about, keeping your mouth shut.
Yeah.
You really need to understand exactly what's considered confidential, what's spelled out in that contract.
Right.
And in Canada, we use these standardized contracts from the Canadian Construction Documents Committee, the CCDC.
Okay.
And those CCDC contracts, like CCTC2, they're big on clear definitions.
Right. Got to avoid any confusion later.
Exactly. Get everything up front.
It's like I don't know. It's like a recipe. The NDA is the recipe book. It tells you exactly what ingredients you can and can't use for other dishes.
I like that. That's a good analogy.
Good.
But it's important to note that both sides have responsibilities here.
Yeah.
This isn't just a one-way street, so these NDAs often outline specific procedures for handling all that sensitive information, like, limiting who has access, how it's stored, even how it's destroyed after the project's done.
No sneaking blueprints out in your lunch bag. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to follow those procedures. Or you could face some pretty serious consequences.
Okay, so there are some exceptions to confidentiality.
Oh, for sure, yeah. There are. So you've got things like legal obligations,
Mm-hmm.
or if both sides agree to disclose something specific.
Right.
And those NDAs typically spell out these exceptions pretty clearly.
Okay, so let's say you discover some safety violations on a project.
Mm-hmm.
Would an NDA prevent you from reporting them?
Well, that's where the balance comes in. Balancing confidentiality with those legal and ethical obligations, right?
Right.
So public safety is paramount.
Of course.
And you absolutely have a duty to report those kinds of things, regardless of an NDA.
Okay, so what about the consequences if you do breach an NDA? Like, is it just a slap on the wrist or?
Oh, no. It's way more serious than that.
Right.
You're talking potential financial penalties, maybe even termination of the contract, lawsuits.
Shakes.
It's not something to take lightly.
And I imagine it could really damage a company's reputation, too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, who wants to work with someone who can't keep a secret?
Right. And especially when we're talking about the Gold Seal certification.
Right.
This really underscores how important it is to understand these principles of confidentiality.
Absolutely.
Demonstrates ethical conduct, professionalism.
It's all about building that trust.
Okay, so let's get practical for a second.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of how this confidentiality thing actually plays out on real construction projects?
Sure. So let's say you're working on a project with these really unique architectural designs.
Okay.
Keeping those plans under wraps until the client's big reveal. That's essential.
Makes sense.
Or maybe you're dealing with a client who has very specific requirements, maybe even sensitive ones, for their building.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want to be gossiping about those details with anyone outside the project team.
Right. Discretion is key.
Exactly. And then in competitive bidding situations, keeping your pricing strategy confidential.
Right.
That's crucial. You don't want your competitors getting a sneak peek at your numbers.
It's about fairness.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets a fair shot.
Absolutely. Level playing field.
So we live in a world now where technology is constantly evolving.
Right.
It's easier than ever to share information.
Oh, yeah.
How do we make sure that confidentiality stays a top priority in construction?
That's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, think about it. We've got instant communication. We're constantly connected. How do we, as professionals, really make sure that those NDAs are more than just pieces of paper?
Yeah, they're the foundation of trust,
Absolutely.
integrity in the industry.
It all comes back to that.
So listeners, I want you to think about this. In this world of ours, how do we ensure confidentiality remains a top priority?
It's an ongoing conversation for sure, and it's something we all need to be mindful of.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and build responsibly.
Sounds good. I like that. Build responsibly.